Hey everybody, Johnny here, coming at you today with some thoughts on hub world versus open world games. And people often present this as a dichotomy, and like these are the only two types of games there can be, but there are other types. You can have just, fully linear experiences where there really isn't a hub, but it's also not an open world. So there are many other types of games you can have outside of these two, and you can have mixes, right? Interestingly, of the two styles. But I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some games that I really liked of one type versus another, where I think the strengths are, and some of the pitfalls and all of that good jazz. So, by the way, if you enjoyed these videos, please let me know down below. Conversely, if you don't like the video, tell me why and give me a shot at doing a better job next time. So, for me, I was thinking today, what are some hub world games that I love? And the first one that comes to mind is Demon's Souls, and also Dark Souls. But Demon's Souls was, I think, a great case of having a hub that represents your progress in your journey. And as you progress, you go out there to the different worlds and things happen out there. When you come back, different characters in the hub have also gone through experiences that in some ways match what you've been through or what the world is going through, and they are in some ways a reflection of the state of the world. For me, when you look at other games like Neo, which I love Neo to bits, right? Neo 2, played the crap out of it. Neo 1, I'm currently playing and almost in the end of the main campaign at the moment. I also love it. I guess you would class it as a hub world game in the sense that you start a mission, you do it to the end, and then you go back out, and there's this kind of hub interface. There really isn't like an actual hub world that you inhabit and you can traverse. It's much more of just a central menu to kick off missions. And for me, that has some benefits because it makes the missions more isolated, and you can go in just to play a mission, right? It's almost like it makes them bite-sized, if that makes sense. Like when you read a book, when the chapters are fairly short and catchy, you're always saying, hey, one more chapter, right? And that's kind of the feeling I get with Neo. So I think it works well in that sense, but it doesn't give me all that stuff that I was talking about that some other hub world games do, where they really build something cool narrative-wise in the hub, and they use it as a tool, right? I was also thinking about Monster Hunter World, another game I love to bits, right? I played the hell out of the game, and it's just so good. The hub in Monster Hunter World had some NPCs, for me, nothing super interesting. So none of the NPCs were characters that are gonna stay with me in any way, shape, or form. But it did have the Gathering Hub, which is, if you're in a party with people, you would see them there. And there's this communal feeling of, we're in the canteen before a hunt, and we're eating some food, we're trying out some new gear, we're making some emotes, right? There's something fun about that, and I have some good memories of that. So it's a very simple hub world in some way, just a place to kick off missions and to lobby with people. But I think it did its job very well. Anything beyond that would be maybe too ambitious, right? It also depends on what the game is trying to do. And like I said, the hub is a tool that's there if you want to expand on the narrative side. I think it can be very powerful, but it's not always needed, right? Maybe all you need from the hub is something functional to kick off missions, and that can also be fine. So I think those are like some good examples to delineate the different styles of hub world games. And then if we think about open world games, I was having a conversation with my friend Rejaku from the ACG podcast today, talking about this. And he brought up, some of his favorite open world games, including the Assassin's Creed. Uh, we talked about Odyssey, Origins, which he actually said he liked the world in Origins more to explore. I thought that was interesting. And those games are very open. Like, really, you could go anywhere in the game. Although, for example, I remember in Valhalla, the areas are delineated with like a level stamp on it. So if you're going into an area that's way higher level than you are, you're gonna be in trouble. It's not gonna be efficient, right? So in some ways, they are directing you to different areas, even though it is technically open. And I think that's fine. It works fine. Those games have, evolved from Origins to Odyssey to Valhalla, and I think they have improved in some ways. Although I would agree that the actual worlds, perhaps, Origins really had something cool and unique with the pyramids that I personally loved. Odyssey, I love the setting because the mythology and all that really speaks to me. I grew up with being exposed to Greek mythology a lot because my mom and dad were big into that, and I guess that spread to me as well. So that excited me, the setting, quite a bit, even though the characters weren't the most relatable or exciting for me. Valhalla was an interesting game as well, where the combat had some cool improvements that I appreciated, but I ended up getting quite burnt out with it, which is, I think, the issue some people have with the open world structure, because it's so easy for you to go out there, do a lot of the side stuff, and never really push through in the main story. And for me, that happened in a lot of games. I remember, for example, Witcher 3, I got sidetracked for endless hours just doing side quests because they were good. They were that good. So it wasn't a bad thing, but in some ways, it breaks the momentum a little bit, right? I mean, think back to Fallout 4. You're supposed to be on this urgent quest of, finding your kid, and yet we're gonna stop for 100 hours to build settlements and do all this other stuff. So there's a break in momentum there, and a break in the urgency of what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be doing these things with, some hurry, and yet you're taking all this time to play Gwent and to do all this other stuff, which I love, but somehow it doesn't jive as well with a story that's trying to push you towards something. So I think that's my issue that I tend to have with open world games. But they can be incredibly immersive. Like I was saying, Origins and some of these Assassin's Creed games have built amazing worlds. And if we take it to Red Dead Redemption 2, there really isn't a more immersive game that I can think of, right? Everything had an animation. You were really immersed into the world, and I would just take my time doing chores and doing things because I enjoyed being in the world, and things felt connected. You could go fish, you could go hunt, and you could have your own hobbies inside of the game, so to speak. And that goes to GTA as well. I mean, kudos to those guys. They make fucking amazing open world games. I did talk about this in a prior video where I talked about GTA Andreas, and man, I had my like daily schedule. I would wake up, I'd hit the gym, like maybe I'd get a burger after, and I had like a mini life inside of the game. That's how immersive it was to me. And that freedom in open world games is absolutely one of the things you get from that, and if done well can be amazing. But for me, you need the narrative to work with it. If you're pushing a narrative of urgency and something that needs to be done right now, and at the same time you have this open world before you that you can explore and do whatever the hell you want, it is always going to create that little bit of like breaking my immersion when it comes to the story and what I'm supposed to be doing versus what I'm actually doing, which is tricky. I mean, I was also thinking about Horizon Zero Dawn, a game that I love. I've recently been replaying it on PC. It plays great on PC. I love the aiming with mouse instead of gamepad, and it looks great. And it's a game about a really cool adventure. You're out on an adventure, and it feels really well paced for an open world game. It doesn't really suffer from a lot of these issues that I'm talking about, largely because I think the game is pushing you to progress and to move on much more than some of the other games where you can really just sit around and play Gwent a lot, for example. I think for me that's a better mix. I really like the games that give you some guidance and give you some structure to kind of keep you motivated towards that end goal, what it is you're trying to achieve. And I find that those games also have a more cohesive and tight narrative that works better for me. But then I thought about Nier Automata. What the hell is Nier Automata, guys? Which camp do you place it on? Because, of course, you have the camp and the bunker that you return to repeatedly, but really there isn't anything in those beyond, some merchants and a couple of dialogue options. So really, it is an open world game in everything that matters for me. The world changes over time, and the changes are reflected in the world much more than in the hub. So for me, it feels and plays like an open world, even though you could technically say, it has a hub. But this is where we now get into semantics and some of the mixes, right? Mix and matches between the two types. And I want to hear from you. What is your favorite hub world game? And what is your favorite open world game? And then we'll see in the comments if we get some consensus and, some stuff we agree on. Hopefully you enjoyed today's rant. I'll see you next week for another one. And as always, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.